Hello, everyone. My name is Miriam.
And my name is Naval.
We're so excited to welcome you today to our youth-led intergenerational discussion on the International Day of Education.
This year's International Day of Education is a platform to showcase the most important transformations to realize everyone's fundamental right to education and build a more sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful future.
The theme for the day is Changing Course, Transforming Education, and we are honored to get to speak with these amazing leaders today and discuss how we can make progress to transform education.
Without further ado, let's get started with our youth leaders.
Josephine and Ashley, to set the scene for our conversation today, can you tell us a bit more about yourselves and the education challenges in your community? Let's start with you, Josephine.
Hi, you've heard the name, Josephine Kamara. I work for an organization called Purposeful. We are an African-rooted feminist up for girls activism. Some of the challenges in education that I've seen in my community, my country, and many spaces I've worked across the country is basically access, girls' access, and children living with disabilities access to education. Yes, the physical environment is a challenge considering the wash facilities available in those spaces, in educational spaces, the disabled friendly environment, gender friendly toilet, but also the system that continually discriminates against girls' access and children living with disability access are mostly some of the things keeping girls and children in particular living with disability out of school. And now the corona outbreak has exposed the digital divides. When schools are closed and learning has to continue virtually, even when some children have access to some of this technology, there's still huge gender disparity as technology is still a privilege that is being withheld from girls. So for my part, mostly those are the things I see as major challenges at this time.
Thank you so much for sharing. We'd love to hear from Ashley next.
Hello, hi colleagues. It's great to join you today. It's Ashley Punye from Zimbabwe. I am a leader at the GPE and also part of the 100 million campaign, and also a student leader from a former National Secretary General, and also a firm member of the All Africa Students Union. I would like to say it's a great opportunity to be here and addressing such fundamental issues, particularly in terms of education, which at this particular moment is in a crisis, particularly in my country, since post-COVID-19, and there are a lot of issues that are rising. You realize that even up to now, schools haven't been opened. They're continuously being postponed. They were scheduled to open on the 11th, but now they are postponed until further notice, probably sometime in February. So that level of uncertainty puts education at risk, also coupled with some of the challenges that were there before, like the infrastructure. We realize that there are some schools that don't have decent infrastructure. Look at in places like Binga here in Zimbabwe and some other surroundings, they don't have proper infrastructure. And even you look at the student to teacher ratio, you realize that a teacher can teach around 60 students. This really compromises the quality of education that we expect. And also you look at even the remuneration of teachers. So that's a critical issue that I think really must be looked into so that we can bring forth quality education. And also, there are a lot of challenges, particularly even in terms of students having proper textbooks, students having proper decent education. So I think these are some of the important challenges that we are facing. So students are traveling long distances to go to school because there are no clear transport systems, there are no clear infrastructure systems that support a young student to be able to afford access education at this time. So I also concur with what the previous speakers spoke about around discrimination. I think the system is really designed to exclude the majority. Some don't even afford to pay their fees. So consequently, these are excluded from the education cycle and education system. So these are the difficult challenges, as we know that in Africa, particularly in Zimbabwe, there are a lot of people who are surviving under the poverty atom line. So this transforms to mean that they don't even afford to pay their own fees to go to school. So we have brilliant minds, brilliant children, but they don't have that access. So for me, it's a question of access, inclusivity, and making sure that we receive quality education. So these are some of the challenges that we are coupled with the education system in Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and both of you for all of the work that you do within your own communities to try and make sure that these challenges are overcome by children and young people across your countries as well. Next, we wanted to ask all of you a question in 1 or 2 words. Can you please describe why education is important to you? And we'll start off with you, Minister Sajjan.
Thank you very much. It's hard to describe it in 2 words. Thank you very much for having me here. First of all, education is extremely important because it unlocks the potential in our kids, unlocks the potential for the unique gift that they have to offer the world. So, as much as we think we're doing it for the children, this is much for our society and our world. Giving them the opportunities, we haven't even no idea the impact that they're going to have. So through quality education, we can unlock their potential.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And next, we'll move on to Minister Moyo.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Good evening, good afternoon, colleagues. In my view, education transforms societies, and that's why I view it as a very important tool of transformation. Education also empowers people. Like the former speaker has said, it unlocks the potential of every citizen in a given country. And that's why it has to be given to everybody in a country unimpeded. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll move on to Josephine.
For me, education is really a passport out of poverty. It doesn't only liberate me, but it liberates my entire family, my community, and the many girls I am inspiring on a daily basis. We know for sure that whenever a girl, according to World Bank, really, every year a girl spend in school kind of like increases a lifetime earning by 5 to 15%. I am a typical example of that. I am an example of what's a wise decision my parents and people around me made to send me to school. I happen to be the only girl and the only member of my family with a university degree at that stage, but my education have really opened the door for my younger siblings who are coming up to now. I have a younger brother who is now getting ready for college in a few months' time. He'll be entering college. So I have really broken that barrier, and I've opened doors for more people to be educated, and I'm liberated because I'm working, earning my own money, taking care of myself and taking care of my family and the people I consider to be part of my community.
Absolutely. That's amazing to hear. And next, we wanted to hear from Ashley.
For me, I think I believe education is the future. It is the future because it, prepares people for the future. It prepares people for what is to come, and so that you can be able to meet the critical issues that we are discussing even today, so that you're able to make tangible solutions for the future generations. So you need that education to be consistent. You need that education to be there at all times. And I think also education evolves around, restoring or bringing back that human dignity. There is value in education, and the moment that you get education in any way, in any form, it brings back that dignity for you to stand, for you to be able to speak out, for you to articulate your issues, for you to be able to proffer solutions for the different situations that we find ourselves in. So it's about the future and about the human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for sharing those thoughts about the importance of education. Next, we actually wanted to go over to Minister Moyo and ask you, what is your vision for transforming the education system in Zimbabwe?
Now, we started off a competency-based curriculum some 5 years ago. And the idea was to have a student who has acquired sufficient competencies for them to go into higher education and develop their skills, their talents, so that they can make livelihoods out of those. Now, in the past, we have had an education system that was about recalling, a simple recall. But then we are saying now students must use that information to innovate, to develop, and also to come up with products and services out of their innovation. So that knowledge that they acquire is knowledge that is not just stored in their brains, in their minds, but then which can be used to transform societies. Now we are also looking at teachers and learners who should have access to ICT tools and connectivity. At the moment, you find that connectivity is largely enjoyed in urban centers, and then the peripheral rural communities don't have much of connectivity as we'd like them to have. And therefore, we are looking at having connectivity funded to reach out to the hard to reach areas so that those children can have equal access to education, equal opportunity in accessing information, equal opportunity in terms of preparing for their lives. We are also looking at GPE as a provider of a platform and also to link partners for resource mobilization and opportunities for equity in the provision of education in our country. It is very important to also understand that inclusive education is a very important aspect of our journey at the moment, where we are trying as much as possible with the difficulties that we have, we are trying to ensure that there is equal access to education. And even the disabled children have sufficient access to education that can make them enjoy their full potential. Since 2013, when Zimbabwe became a partner in the GPE, a lot of institutional capacity building, curriculum development, and strengthening of policy frameworks has taken place. And we want to very much mention that we are grateful to GPE for that intervention. On the infrastructure side, government is committed to building over 3,000 schools in the next 5 years to decongest existing schools and also to take care of the growing population. With the advent of COVID-19 and the resultant protocols requiring that we have reduced class sizes, it has been found important that we increase our classroom space so that we can decongest. We are not yet there, but we are walking the journey. And we therefore invite the private sector to come on board in the provision of such infrastructure for the decongestion of existing schools. Education transformation is a critical building block towards the achievement of Vision 2030. In that regard, universal access to quality, equitable, and inclusive education is critical. Our Constitution and Education Act guarantees this access to all who require education, both in the formal route and the non-formal route. Finally, COVID-19 has not only devastated our education programs. On the positive, it has helped to quicken the uptake of digital learning. With the digital dominance in industry, commerce, including banking and many other fields, our learners will no longer be left behind because the advent of COVID-19 has pushed us to quicken our pace in adopting and also using digital platforms in our education system. We have to adapt fully to the new COVID-19 reality and be able to live with it and not allow the pandemic to further disrupt learning. Yes, we have had a situation where once the numbers increase of the transmission of the virus, we have to, as a health preventative measure, we have to delay opening of schools so that when our numbers go down, then we can allow schools to open so that we don't endanger the lives of our teachers and our students. Thank you very much. That's the route, that's the vision that we want to walk so that we can transform education in Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Moyo. It's great to hear that the progress that's being made and also your vision as well. So thank you again for your contributions. Now we'd love to move on to Minister Sajjan. The theme of this year's International Day of Education is Changing Course, Transforming Education. Canada has been a leading contributor to education globally, and we wanted to ask you, how do you plan on upholding that commitment?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that question. Canada's commitment to education is absolutely fundamental, but it's focused within our feminist international assistance policy. So our top priority is ensuring that gender equality is taken into account in everything that we do, including how we support education, and this is critical. So Canada is proud to be a global leader in support of ensuring that all children, particularly girls, can access quality education no matter where they live, and that's important as well. This is especially important at a time when the pandemic has caused huge challenges that the Deputy Minister has outlined to access quality education, and that we continue to see an increase in the number of crises around in conflict settings that is even putting a greater challenge on educating our children, especially girls. So this is why we are a strong supporter and partner of the Global Partnership of Education, which now works in approximately 90 countries around the world towards the same objective. And I'm proud to reiterate the $300 million pledge over 5 years to the Global Partnership for Education, which Prime Minister Trudeau announced at the G7 summit in June of last year. And it's also why Canada launched the Together for Learning campaign last year. And this 3-year commitment is bringing together global stakeholders and national partners around a commitment to ensure quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for refugees, other forcibly displaced, and host community children and youth. A key element of this campaign is amplifying local voices so that our actions are informed by experiences, perspectives, and advice of youth, parents, teachers, and activists who have been experienced displacement. Canada's commitment to girls and refugees' educations are centered in the SDG principle to leave no one behind. Every child, regardless of their gender, background, situation, or ability, deserves to dream, to thrive, and to reach their full potential, as I stated earlier. Now, one example of how we're doing this is the Girls' Education in South Sudan project, which is jointly supported by Canada and the UK. And this project addresses barriers to girls' education by providing cash transfers to families so that their daughters can complete their education. Now, this includes grants to schools to improve sanitation and hygiene infrastructure, radio programs about ministerial hygiene and the prevention of sexual gender-based violence and child marriage. And to date, the project has helped over 600,000 girls continue their education. And I also want to stress that even during this pandemic. Another example is the Transforming Girls Education Project, a $6 million project which focuses on improving the learning outcomes of vulnerable girls and boys in primary grades in Sierra Leone. And the project is working to integrate gender-sensitive teaching methods and resources into classrooms to support 100 women teachers in training through scholarships. And finally, just want to stress is, as we look at the infrastructure through quality education of our youth, we're going to be able to create more teachers as well. And this will also add to the solution of a very ongoing important issues that we face around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's amazing to hear the contributions that Canada has been able to make and what it hopes to make in the future as well. And we wanted to move on to our youth leaders, and we wanted to ask about the fact that you've heard from ministers of Canada and Zimbabwe, and we wanted to ask what your reflections are and what you are seeing is needed to get all children learning in Sierra Leone and Zimbabwe. We'll start off with Josephine, and then we'll move on to Ashley.
I just want to say that these are very progressive actions led by these two countries. Just hearing what Canada's commitment has been over the year was just like, it's really amazing. And also learning about some of the development strides by Zimbabwe is also an amazing feeling for me, because to be honest, a lot of African countries look up to Zimbabwe because we know how the education system is among Africa as a whole. In Sierra Leone, we now have what we call radical inclusion in education in school, radical inclusion in school policy. And I'm mentioning this because I had most of the ministers talking about equal opportunities and inclusion in education. And also, I know for sure, we all know that Zimbabwe now also have a policy that allows pregnant girls to go to school. But we're also hearing that a lot of girls are not staying in school. So it's a cause for concern for all of us as a country, all of us as a nation or as a continent, to have like a united front towards making conscious investment, not only to remove the barriers for girls to access education, but also to make sure that when they access education, they get to stay in school and they get to continue school and they get to graduate from school. These progressive policies, lifting these bans, making policies inclusive for all children to access education, will be more successful if we start to look at the environment, making sure that the environment is free from harassment, from stigma, and from exclusion of all kind, and also making conscious investment in providing targeted support for pregnant learners and vulnerable learners. I like to really focus on that particular group of girls, because I know what it means to kick them out of school and what kind of future they will have for themselves and for their children. But I really congrats the two country, and I applaud them for this wonderful strides they're making. I'll just use or add my voice to say we must do more, and that more include investing in girls' education. And it's one of the wisest investments any country can make.
I'm so happy to hear the ministers speak. They speak life to education. They speak inspiring words, particularly in terms of how they are going to put education in the map. And also, I'm happy to hear from my minister that he is promising that the government is looking into building around 3,000 schools, which is a welcome act. And also the work that GPE has been doing in Zimbabwe, working with the Ministry of Education, is something that we applaud, and is something that we are happy about. For me, I think the most important thing is been highlighted by everyone is around looking into the post-COVID era. Looking at the curriculum itself, we need to review it so that it becomes modern and relevant to address the issues that are coming in each day, and to be able to respond quickly to the very changing global effects. So we need a curriculum that is going to prepare young people to prepare the future in terms of the work that is coming. The future of work must be prepared now. So it's action that you must take at this stage in terms of reviewing our different curriculums, because those that are there, they really don't address what has happened during the pandemic. So we need to then revert and go back so that we prepare the next generation to address the problems and challenges that they are going to face in the coming years. And also, I think, one fundamental issue that I think, particularly from countries in Africa, you understand that there is a struggle around, making education free education. It's something that I was hoping the minister is going to articulate on. It's having students, being excluded because of financial incapacities. It's something that is not fair. So we should look into having, a free education system, particularly from the primary and secondary, because these are basic education levels and everyone must have access to those. So I think it's important that in our mapping and in our vision, we should include the aspect of free education. And also, I think fundamentally, the inclusivity aspect. I think, Josephine has addressed a lot about girls' education. And I think, the COVID era has exposed a lot of young girls to sexual violence and other things that have been stopped the female child to be able to access, proper education. So these are things that even, at a school setup, the teachers, the whole education system must support the girl child. The whole education system must invest in making sure that there are follow-ups made to those dropouts to understand what is happening and how best can society assist in order to bring back that potential that each individual has. And I want to say that the government also, particularly in Zimbabwe, there have been a lot of strikes, a lot of protests, from the teacher side. And I hope the minister is taking note of that, so that they can address that, remuneration, so that, they are in agreement, so that when the teachers go to work, also they are happy and they teach their students happy, and they can assist, in providing the best and quality education that can ever be found. Zimbabwe has always been at the top in terms of the education system. We hope that it remains at the top and inspires a lot of African countries and the globe at large in terms of the education that we want and the education that we dream of, an inclusive, free, accommodative, and accessible education for all. I think basically the ministers addressed a lot of issues and the vision is clear, and I hope what is left is implementation. So it's these following years are years of implementing what we promised and implementing the visions that we have articulated at different points. But overall, I thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And as we close and take an optimistic approach to the start of 2022, we wanted to ask, what kind of changes are you hoping to see in education systems in Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, and beyond? And we can start off with Minister Moyo.
Yes, thank you very much for the question and for the opportunity to also say more on Zimbabwe. Now, what I would want to see in 2022 is increased connectivity of our schools, especially those in the rural areas. We would like to see improved access to ICT gadgets. Yes, we talk about digital learning, but then the tools to achieve digital learning are not accessible to all our children in Zimbabwe. So we would want to progressively work towards that. And want to see an increased participation of the private sector in the provision of education, particularly infrastructure. And we would like to see increased budgetary allocations for education, spending, and investment. Because education is not just about spending, it's also more about investing into the future, particularly the girl child, to achieve equitable access to education. We would like to see all girls and boys back to school after COVID-19. We know what has happened during lockdowns. A lot of our children have not come back to school for different reasons, including early marriages, including some of our children going to look for work and things like that. So we'd like to see in 2022 an improvement in the return to school by all our students. On the GPE side, we would like to very much request that GPE looks at enhancing the support, particularly for the acquisition of gadgets like tablets for our students, because we have tried through different ministries and different agencies to provide laptops, to provide iPads, and so forth, but that is not enough. We need support so that we can get it there. And we would like to see, like the other colleague has spoken about Zimbabwe, the resolution of the remuneration issues concerning our teachers. It is not a healthy environment that our industrial relations are always under check. We would like to see all our teachers motivated and back to class. In fact, government is committed to addressing those issues, but then we are progressively trying to address them, because any radical address of the issues as presented might result in economic shocks. So we would appreciate that our teachers also look at it from the point of view of a progressive address to those issues. We would like to see most of our students being assisted with school fees. The other colleague has spoken passionately about free education. We know that that is an economic bearing, but government for 2022 has targeted 1.5 million children to be covered under the BEAM assistance, so that those children whose means are limited for them to pay fees are assisted by the government. And 1.5 million is about 25% of the school-going population in Zimbabwe. So basically, finally, there's also the issue of curriculum review. Our curriculum has been running for 5 years and it is due for a review this year in 2022. It will be very important for all of us to participate in that review so that we make inputs in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, because when this curriculum was first implemented, it had not taken into account issues around pandemic, because no one knew we were going to suffer this COVID-19 pandemic. And so we also look at the opportunity to look at it in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Moyo, for that thorough response. We wanted to move on to Josephine.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I guess my dream for the future is this year moving forward is to make sure that school systems are not built to fail girls. And when I say that, I mean every school around me and in most part of Africa is built in such a way that girls are have limited access to it. If you build schools without proper wash facilities, obviously you're going to keep girls away from attending school. And we know that period poverty kind of like contributes in making girls not attending school. So we want to see a world where every girl can have access to pad, so that whenever they're having their monthly flow, they will not stay home because of that. And there is clear opportunity for them to come in and gain better chances in life. And also another major thing that I like to see is this radical inclusion in school policy in Sierra Leone and for many spaces in the African continent that are currently pushing this progressive policy to make sure that conscious investment is made so that girls will have access, girls and parent learners will have access to education. They'll be able to go to school and they'll be able to stay and graduate from school. When they're pregnant, they can access school, and even after pregnancy, they will be able to continue school. So these are the kind of things that I am envisioning for this here. And most importantly, before I pass on the conversation to someone else, is just to make sure that the investment in bridging this digital divide is being consciously made, so that every child, irrespective of their gender, irrespective of which part of the world that they are living in, whether they're in rural or very urban, rural, very extreme poverty area, they will have access to the simplest technology like a radio, a solar charger, so that they will not be left out in this transformative education that is happening when schools are closed and education is happening virtually. A lot of children are not gaining access to that. So my dream, my big dream, or my optimism for the future is to make sure that that access is being given and that gap is being bridged.
Thank you so much for sharing. We wanted to end off with Ashley.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I share the same sentiment as what the previous colleagues have spoken about. You know, the main issue being preparing students for the future of work, which has been altered by the pandemic. As you have also highlighted, the issue of connectivity. I think we should now see and have a proper infrastructure to assist in terms of e-learning, online learning, and to make sure that students are equipped with the proper gadgets to be able to facilitate that learning process. Because it's clear to everyone, it's a public secret, that education has changed, that the world has evolved, and we have to prepare the future for what is to come, which is the future is prepared through our education. And also, I think among other issues, I would love to see inclusivity, to make sure that everyone has access to education, regardless of their background, financial status, all those things. They should make sure that they are not a hindrance towards the progress of humankind. And also, we would love to see all governments, making education a top priority, and see prioritizing it and making sure that it invests much, like what the minister was saying, to say the government is investing, millions in education system. So it's something that we are happy about, and we are making sure that, we see the effectiveness of, money being invested, resources being invested, and a lot of things that are invested in education. Also in the future, we would love to see, schools being built, student to teacher ratio. It must be addressed so that we get proper and quality education. We want to see more girls at school. We want to make sure to see, institutions upholding policies that, stand with girls, stand against discrimination of any kind. Want to see infrastructure development so that, it's accommodative even for people living with disabilities, so that it's accommodative for everyone, and making sure that students won't have to travel long distances just to get education. So by the time they get there, they'll be tired and they won't be able to concentrate. That's why we need schools to be closer to them. Basically, we also want to see in our teachers, as I mentioned, the government must maintain those tripartite negotiations. The government must continuously engage all stakeholders. We want to see even consultations by the ministry, consulting stakeholders, so that we co-create this education system. It's a journey that we haven't traveled before, but we are all willing to travel together. So there is power in being together, and there is power in molding the education that we all want, because this education affects us all. Education is our future. So thank you very much for having me today and facilitating this great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your contributions, everyone. Those are really great visions, and we were so happy to see all these contributions as well. And just to finish off, we'd love to pass it on to Minister Sajjan. What are your hopes for the role of donors in transforming education in 2022, including through the G7?
Thank you. First of all, what Canada wants to do is try to lead the conversation to making sure that we have more donors taking part on this very important endeavor, because ultimately this is about preventing conflict and reducing some of those challenges. And my personal goals that I'd like to see was how do we reduce the barriers to education. And our two colleagues, Josephine and Ashley, have outlined it extremely well, as the Deputy Minister has as well. Everything from when it comes to the period poverty, it's real. We need to talk about it and we need to do something about it. Canada is there and already looking at providing support, but those are things that are real. We need to look at the cultural challenges within different nations. When it comes to early child marriage, we need to educate them of an impact that it has by educating a girl. It's better off for the family. And somebody told me some time ago, when you educate a girl, you educate the entire family. And all of you are tremendous examples of what education and the opportunities it can bring, not only to you, but the impact that you can have on your own communities, your own country, and the world. And if I can just highlight my sister, I was born in a very small village, and I used to sit in her class underneath the tree sometimes in our small village. And you guys all know this extremely well. If somebody was to look at my sister back then, would they have saw any potential? The answer would have been no. My sister right now, if you look at her completely now, she has a master's from Harvard, and actually focused on education and technology and how do you combine the two, right? She has three health companies companies that were developed, and then they sold off, and the impact that she's also having. The point being is, we need to highlight the examples of the tremendous success. All of you are tremendous examples of this. We need to, your voices that you have, we need to amplify those voices and turn them into action. And those barriers, whether it's distance to education, the health side of things, the cultural side of things, the violence, all those need to be addressed. Those need to be addressed. If you look at the other challenges of the deputy minister talked about, more classrooms, more teachers, reducing the number of teacher to student ratio. Those are challenges as well. We cannot stomp on this, because this is one area. If we continue to creating the ripple effect, it'll have a massive impact for the future. So I'm very hopeful for 2022. The pandemic has provided a lot of challenges, but through this, we're going to learn, and we need to amplify those voices, break down those barriers, and continue to work together. But more importantly, we need your advice. And so thank you very much for your tremendous leadership, all of you, for showing us as ministers on the right direction to go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sajjan, and thank you, everyone. The conversation today was so inspiring, and we got to learn so much about not only the challenges, but your visions and the ways that you're taking actions. And so that's so inspiring to hear. And we really hope that as we move forward, we take the bold and brave actions in terms of policy decision-making that is necessary in order to make the changes we want to see in the education space. And we know that youth leaders like Josephine and Ashley are there pushing forward and making sure that this work gets done. But also, we're really inspired by Minister Moyo and your work as well, Minister Sajjan, and your commitment to make these things happen. And so we hope that as we work together, we're able to bring these visions to life and make sure that we're creating the changes that are necessary in order to transform education.
So thank you everyone again for joining us, and we hope that all of our audience members who are able to tune into this discussion are leaving just as inspired as we are. Thank you everyone.